Today, we're going to continue down the path of step 1, planning for your preferred future. Now, so far, I've established the fact that retirement is a cash flow problem and not a matter of how much money you have. I've laid out the ground rules for building a successful plan, and you've learned how to estimate your cash flow needs throughout retirement. Today, I'm going to introduce you to 3 key concepts of cash flow planning. Number 1, the cash flow pyramid. Number 2, the income gap. And number 3, income stability ratio. So let's get started with the cash flow pyramid. The cash flow pyramid is simply a depiction of the different levels of confidence we can have with the different kinds of income and cash flow we might receive in retirement. The most secure types of income are at the bottom of the pyramid. Those are guaranteed, or said another way, promise-based. These include things like Social Security, pensions, wages, guaranteed income annuities, charitable annuities, guaranteed life insurance, reverse mortgages, and rental income. A good way to know if a source of cash flow falls into this category is to ask yourself if there's a guarantee or promise in place ensuring a specific amount of income so long as you perform your duty under the contract. For instance, Social Security is guaranteed by the Social Security Administration because we make contributions during our working years. Pension funds are much the same. Annuities and life insurance with specific income guarantees are guaranteed by those life insurance companies. Rental income is guaranteed by a lease agreement. Provided someone lives there, they're required to pay the rent. Wages are guaranteed by employment agreements. If we show up and do our job, our employer is required to pay us. Charitable annuities are guaranteed by the charities themselves, and reverse mortgages are guaranteed by the bank. At first glance, the key would seem to be obvious, and having as much of our income as possible come from this bottom level of the pyramid. However, this isn't always feasible or even wise, because you need to balance your need for stable, increasing lifetime income with your need for flexibility and liquidity as the years go by. Typically, there's a cost associated with any guarantee. For example, the most stable sources of income usually aren't also completely liquid, like a pension or Social Security check. Those come with a high level of assurance that you're going to get the income, but there's no liquid pool of money you can access whenever you need it. Now, the second level of the pyramid is cash flow that's perceived to be very stable, but it's not guaranteed. We just have a pretty high level of confidence that it's going to be there when we need it. These would be investments or savings vehicles that are very conservative in nature, either because of the underlying investment itself or because of the way that they're managed. Some examples of these may be short-term bond or bond fund or certain defensively tactical investment strategies. The value and associated income stream of both will fluctuate, but they tend to be much more stable than, say, that of an individual stock or mutual fund, which leads us to level 3. The top level, variable, refers to assets that have significantly more potential for volatility, both in their underlying value and in their associated cash flow. Oftentimes, these are the investments you may have grown most accustomed to during the accumulation phase of your lifetime, but because you could tolerate more volatility and had little to no need for the income thanks to your annual salary. These would be things like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs or exchange-traded funds, variable annuities, or even sub-accounts in your 401k or other retirement plan, things like that. These 3 levels of cash flow on the cash flow pyramid are not subjective. One person can't say their long-term bond or stock dividend feels like it's in level 1, while another says it feels like it's in level 2, and yet another says it feels like it's in level 3. Just because your experience with something has been a certain way in the past doesn't mean it has to be or will be that way going forward. Your assurance is either intrinsic to the underlying asset or it isn't. Kind of like real estate. Real estate always goes up, right? Until it doesn't. We all experienced that back in 2007 and 8. Suffice it to say, this is not a subjective exercise. Your income is either guaranteed or it isn't. So the whole purpose of the cash flow pyramid is to help you develop a better understanding of how stable and predictable your income sources are. Which brings us to the second cash flow concept I want to introduce you to, and that's called the income gap. The income gap is simply the difference in any given calendar year between the amount of money you're guaranteed to receive, promise-based income, and the amount you actually need. In other words, it's the difference between what you're getting from that bottom level of the pyramid and what your total annual need is. So the income gap is how much money you'll need each year from non-guaranteed sources, either from level 2 or level 3, that is the middle or top of the pyramid. This is why it's so important to have a plan that details the sources of your income for each and every year of your life. Not just a general estimation based on your overall portfolio and estimated life expectancy and estimated average rate of return. That's what most people have. And for me, I just can't imagine retiring with something like that as my only income security. Now, once you know the size of your income gap for each and every year of your anticipated lifetime, you can then calculate what we call your income stability ratio. This is the third point I want to teach you about today. This is a ratio or percentage of how much of your total lifetime income need will be met by guaranteed or promise-based sources versus that income that has to rely on the performance of your investments. So in a perfect world, we would all like to have an income stability ratio of 100%, meaning all the income you'll ever need is guaranteed to be there when you'll need it. But realistically, that's not typically possible because you have to balance your cash flow needs with your desire for liquidity and flexibility over time. Unless you have far more money than you'll ever spend. And even then, no matter how large your net worth may be, you still may have a very low income stability ratio, meaning most of your money or income throughout retirement could be based on investments that could lose some or all of their value. So I typically recommend you shoot for an income stability ratio of about 80%. This means that only 20% of your income need is dependent on the performance of your investments. And at times like these, a high ISR income stability ratio feels really, really good because most of your income is not dependent on your investment performance. Now, in the end, the basic idea is to allocate the minimum amount of assets possible toward generating the maximum amount of cash flow, so you can retain as much separate discretionary assets as possible. So you want to try to avoid consuming the assets that are generating your income. That would be like taking a bite out of the goose that's laying your golden eggs. Instead, you want to distinguish between those assets that are generating your monthly income and those that are available to use on a discretionary basis, hopefully for fun things, but also in case you have unexpected expenses. This way, when and if you dip into those discretionary assets, you won't be placing an added burden on the assets that are generating your monthly income. So the phrase for today is income stability ratio.